So I have a question. Do you guys not associate dark skin with South Africa? And I'm asking this because as someone who grew up in a city as a dark skinned person, um, I got asked a lot when I was growing up. Even now, sometimes I get it. But I got asked a lot whether I was Congolese, right? Congolese was the main one. And then sometimes I'd get like, I got Kenya. I've gotten Ghana a few times. Not a lot. It's not very common. But I've gotten it a few times. And just a few other random African countries, right? Everything but South Africa. And I remember when I was younger, it was such a strange experience because I used to have one of my best friends was Congolese and she was lighter skinned than me. And she used to have the opposite problem, which was that people used to always greet her in Venak, right? So sometimes strangers would find us together and they'd greet her in Zulu and they'd turn to me and greet me in English. And I was always like, okay, in order for people to talk to me in Venak, I had to say something to them in Venak. Then they'd be like, and I suppose that's my question. Do you guys not associate dark skin with South Africa and it being a South African feature? Because there were other friends outside of my best friend. There were other friends as well that I'd sometimes be with, like friends of friends that weren't South African, but they were yellow bones. And we'd have the same experience. People would speak to them in Venek and they'd have to correct that. And they'd turn to me and speak to me in English. And I'd have to respond in Venek to make sure that you can talk, And I'm asking this because I remember also a few months ago, there's a lady who posted her two dark-skinned daughters here. And she wrote that, oh, my South African daughters, blah, blah, blah. And the comments were crazy. People were talking about how there's no South African person who looks like this. Those kids are, like, they were literally calling those kids xenophobic slurs. And I was looking at those kids and nothing about them said they were not South African. Like, I was looking at them and it was just like, okay, like, I couldn't see what the outrage was about, but people were really angry. And it was like, I was just thinking, like, do you guys think that there are no dark-skinned South Africans? Okay, I know you know this, but another thing that I've noticed is that the dark-skinned people that you guys are willing to accept, they have to be extremely beautiful. They have to be perfect in order for you to acknowledge that they are. So yeah, like, what is it?
Buckle up because this is going to be very, very interesting. And first, I'm going to show you some videos of people's experiences in South Africa that have gone through colorism. But before we get to that, I just want to remind you that colorism is not just a South African problem. So before you drag the South Africans thinking that, oh, this is a South African problem and they are so evil for doing this and they are the worst set of human beings, this is something that's done in Kenya. It's something that's done in Congo. It's done in Somalia. It's done in Uganda. Every other African country, they are colorist. And it's not even a lie. And this is also something that it's done outside Africa in other black communities. Am I validating it? No. Am I a dark person that has also gone through the same? Of course, yes. And I'm going to give you my experiences at the end. But before you judge South Africans and saying, oh, these are the most evil people, because we have that habit of judging them and expecting them to be perfect, unlike every other African, this is also something that's done in your country, and it's also done in your neighboring country, and we all know why it got to this place. So let's watch these videos and then we'll come back to our discussion, and I hope you're doing well wherever you're watching me from.
There's literally nobody that hates the conversation about colorism like light-skinned girls and black men. And it says a lot about the internalized racism amongst black people. You guys literally don't think it's that deep, and it's so ignorant, and I'm gonna tell you why. A few years ago, I will never forget this because it literally marked me for life. These two dark-skinned girls came up to me. I think I was walking in the streets. I came from the shop, and they were like, "You're so pretty, you're light." Literally, when I heard them say that, I didn't take it as a compliment. Instead, I started to feel sad because I was like, ish, they're associating beauty to light skin. Because if they had just said, oh, you're so beautiful, then I would have said, oh, it's not that deep, like, they just think I'm pretty. But because they mentioned the light skinness, then I was like, ish, okay, they can already tell that if you are light, you are pretty. They already have it in them that light-skinned girls are pretty. So as much as I'm not necessarily like light or a yellow bone, but to them, anyone that's a shade lighter than them is good looking. That was literally just one scenario, and I've experienced many more, but it said a lot about the backgrounds or homes that they come from. Because if you have a father that dated your mother because he didn't want dark-skinned kids like him, and then it happens that the mom doesn't give birth to light-skinned girls, and it's so popular, guys, like it's so common that light skin doesn't dominate, dark skin dominates in the genes. Light skin is a recessive gene, so it can only dominate if the father also has light skin somewhere. But if the father is dark and his family is dark and the woman is the only one that is light, then it's not going to dominate. And that's literally what people don't understand. But anyway, so if your dad dated your mom because he wanted light-skinned kids, and then you come out dark-skinned like him, that internalized colorism that the father preferred a daughter or a child that is light-skinned is going to show, and the children are going to know it. You can try your best to hide it and act like, you're okay with your daughter being dark-skinned, like it's not that serious, but it's going to come out in many ways. For example, if they have cousins or family members that are constantly picking at their dark skin, you don't stand up for them. You just say, hi, and just brush it off. Like, you don't stand up against it and say, no, that is not right. My daughter is beautiful. Just because she's dark skinned doesn't mean that she's ugly. When you have a mom that felt honored to be loved by black men because she was light-skinned, you're going to suffer, because when you are going through dark-skinned girl problems, she's not going to be able to help you. She's not going to be able to defend you because she doesn't know what it's like to be you, and she didn't care. So she's not all of a sudden going to have information or know how to help you because she never bothered. She always thought that she was superior and everybody else was jealous. So I watched an interview by Busisa some years ago, and she was saying how she was so shocked when she came into the industry that people were calling her ugly and saying that her complexion was dark and ugly. The shockery came from the fact that she spent her whole life being told by her family, her mom, her dad, her sisters or brothers, that she was the most beautiful girl in the world, and that's all she's ever known. So the minute she went into the world and the world said, you are ugly, she was like, oh hell no, that can't be true, because I was brainwashed to think that I am pretty, so there's no way what you're saying is true. I fight colorism every day because that's what I want for my kids. Like, I want my kids to have a father that says, hey, when I tell those kids at school that they must stop lying because you look like your dad and your dad is handsome, so you are definitely beautiful, like they must stop lying to you. This dark skin, this nose, these eyes, you got them from me, and I am handsome, so there's literally no way you're ugly. If you're someone that loves yourself, loves your complexion, love people that look like you, it will literally show. Like, it will literally show, and your kids will know it. So yeah, guys, if it's not that deep and it's just a preference, then go ahead. But your children are gonna suffer in the long run.
South African men are fucking colorist, and a lot of women swear that it doesn't exist in this country.
When she said she's not dark-skinned, because I read her comments and some people were calling her out, she meant there's a spectrum of brown skin. There's a spectrum of melanin. And the more brown-skinned you are, the more melanin you are, hence you're dark-skinned. We mean you have more melanin, your skin is very pigmented, like it's close to, like you're black. She means that's when the treatment is at its worst. She was speaking spectrum wise, not that she was denying that she's part of that spectrum. And I just wanted to extend this conversation because I think it needs to be targeted at a certain group of people, not just black men. I think younger black girls, because when I was, still in primary school, going into high school, we'd see this happening where the darker skinned you were, the more badly you were treated. How it's not just even your skin tone, it's like your hair, how it was so encouraged to relax our hair because it's closer to Eurocentric beauty standards, closer to whiteness. How, a lot of the girls started using skin bleaching creams, because it was so normal. Like, it was like, you know, we'd run away from the sun because we didn't want to get darker. Like, all of these things were so normal. And a lot of black girls, you know, grow up under this model, having to deny their blackness, whether it's their skin tone or their Afrocentric features. They grow up under this model from very young. And we need to target the education there, because I feel like if we're going to attack black men, because a lot of the time the perspective is, you know, on black men and how they don't treat black women well, which is very valid and important to raise, because I feel like it also feeds into GBV and all of those things, because you seldom ever hear, you know, about GBV cases between interracial couples where it's a black man and a white woman. But when it's a black man and a black woman, you know, it all feeds into how he views the black woman. But I think it creates a lot of resentment, and I think that we need to empower our girls, right? Just as much as we call out the black men. If schools can, you know, have black girl-centered education about embracing your blackness, your Afrocentric features, your Afro-type hair, you know, because you grow up believing that, like, you're prettier in weaves and all of these things, right? Even going into your 20s, it's all there. And I feel like more than anything, we need to be empowering and targeting the perspective and raising the awareness specifically to the girls, the black girls, especially the younger ones, right? And then I also, one last point, I know this video is dragging. Someone mentioned how it's better to date white men. I mean, arguably, I could imagine so, but you need to be careful, because if you analyze it, sometimes white men actually just fetishize black women. It's not even based on love. This thing of they want to date the most Afrocentric, the blackest of looking black women, if you know what I'm saying. Like, or they'll date like a black woman who's exceptional, you know, like she's really brilliant, she stands out, something like that, not just your ordinary black woman. And that's all about fetishizing. You know, it goes back to colonial era where you know, how the colored race even emerged, because the white men raped our black women, you know, because they fetishized over black women, you know, but did not value them as human beings. So again, when you're empowering young black girls or black women, don't say you know, you're better off dating white men. And, you know, part of your education should also be warning black women about that like, it's not just you're worthy, or, you know, it's not just about you being appealing to the black man or to the white man. As you are, you don't have to be exceptional, you don't have to be this exotic alien prototype of blackness. Just your ordinary black is beautiful and worthy, you know. That's just like the few thoughts I have.
I remember growing up, they used to say to me, when you switch off the light, the only thing that we see is your teeth. Guys, it was so mean and so dehumanizing. And it brought shame amongst dark-skinned people. And I hate it when people say, oh, dark-skinned people have such a victim mentality. Obviously, when someone keeps comparing you and making you feel like you're less than because of your complexion and your features, I'm gonna be sensitive about it. In the same way, when someone comes up to you and says, oh, I'm Venda Tsonga or Changani, and I feel like Venda people stand their ground, but someone would just say, Pengu Pengu. For what?
I say it's not only a South African problem. I'm not trying to invalidate anybody's experience in South Africa or say that it is right to do that. Of course, it's not right. And I've seen a lot of people saying that it's not just about colorism, it's about also the physical, you know, features of somebody's, like the shape of somebody's face and things like that, that would make people to ask you if you're from South Africa or if you're not from South Africa. And I would understand that. Sometimes you see someone around, not just I'm not talking about South Africa only. You'd see somebody in another country and you look at how other people look in that country and how that person look in that country. There are two different things. Like, it's not just about the skin color. Like, you look at the height, the shape of their face, the shape of their jaws, and things like that, and you'll see, oh, this person might not be from Kenya. And it's not because they are ugly or whatsoever. Maybe they are even more beautiful than the typical people around the country, but you'll just conclude that, oh, maybe this person is not from this country. And there are people that are saying that they've experienced that in South Africa, even if they are light skinned. But now let's talk about the colorism part. The colorism part, yes, it's there, and all these people have gone through that. And so many people think, oh, if you're dark skinned, you're not so South African. And this, apparently, it does not work the same for women and men. People are okay with men being dark, and they're not okay with women being dark. And that's why a lot of our African brothers, or a lot of our African men, they always go for the lighter girls. They always go for those ones that are closer to being white, the people that are more light or whatsoever. That is what they go for, and it's not a secret, and we don't have a problem for that. I personally don't have a problem with that. A lot of people would say it's preference, and others would say it's selfish. But for me, it's just their preference. Let them do whatever they do. And I, as a dark-skinned woman, I would go where I'm wanted, right? But now let's go back to like the whole, self-esteem and how you're made feel when you're dark, and how you made feel like you don't belong or you're not wanted. This is something that happens in the rest of Africa, and I'm not even kidding. I've listened to South African dark-skinned girls talk about how when they were in primary school, this is how they were treated by their teachers. They were hated by their teachers. You had to work harder to prove yourself just because you're dark-skinned. That also happened to me, and I've seen it happening to so many other girls. Another time I was at a store here in Kenya, and a little girl tells me that a friend of hers told her that she was ugly just because she was dark, and I felt so sad for that child. But this is something that even children know, because they've been trained to know that, oh, dark is ugly, and this is what is beautiful. So if you're dark, you're ugly, and if you're not dark, you're beautiful. And if you see a dark person, they're ugly, and this is how you should treat them. And a lot of people, when they speak about this, they're often told that you shouldn't be saying this. You have a victim mentality. You're always dragging each other. You hate yourself. That's why you talk about yourself like that. But in the real sense, it is what happens around. I myself, when I was growing up, I had really, really little self-esteem about my skin, and I was waiting for the time when I can actually bleach myself and look lighter. I used to look forward to finishing high school so that I can bleach myself. I hated my skin. I hated to see myself like this. I never knew I was beautiful because everybody else was telling me how ugly I was, how ugly my skin was, and everything. And this is something that's happening both at school and at home. And even the people that look like you are approving that you're ugly because they don't like themselves. So you get to a point where you hate yourself too much, you hate your skin too much. But I'm so glad that this changed for me when I grew up and I got a bit older and I understood myself. I got into a school where so many people were dark skinned and they were so confident, they were so proud of their skin tone, and that shifted my entire mentality on my skin, and I love my skin so much right now. But now thinking about the children that actually experience colorism, they cannot control that. You cannot tell a child to love themselves when you haven't shown them how to love that person that you're telling them to love. They cannot love themselves. Another time I was sitting down with my nieces, and my nieces are a bit lighter. I don't know, kids in my family, they ended up turning light skinned. Okay, whatever. So I'm sitting down with my nieces and my brother, and my brother is a bit darker than me. So my nieces, of which I always see my brother as a very handsome man, even his skin tone, it's flawless. I love his skin. So I'm sitting down with my nieces, and my nieces say, oh, auntie is more beautiful than our uncle. And I'm like, where is this coming from? And then they start talking about how his skin is darker and mine is lighter, so that is what they're comparing beauty to. And I was like, wait a little bit, so is this what they tell you in school? And then they say, yes, if somebody is like lighter, they are more beautiful. If they are not lighter, they are not beautiful. And that really broke my heart. It really broke my heart to know that there is a dark-skinned 5-year-old somewhere, or a dark-skinned 7-year-old somewhere, that is getting shamed for just having this skin that they have. So it's not just a South African problem, it's a problem that we have it in Africa and the entire black community, because I've heard so many stories about being dark. Now, talking about how women treat dark-skinned women, if you're darker, how men treat dark-skinned women, if you are darker, they're gonna show you how. Like, the more light you are, the easier you are treated in a relationship. And these, our African brothers, have proved themselves, and I have seen that all the time. The darker you are, the worst you're treated in a relationship. Now, not talking about the relationship, I was working in South Africa, and I can't tell you how many times people asked me if I'm from Zimbabwe. And that time I did not know the relationship between South Africa and Zimbabwe. But if I knew then, I don't know how I would have responded. But I just kept reminding them that I was from Kenya, and I do not judge them. And to be honest, if I'm walking in South Africa and I look like this, the image that I've been shown of South Africa is not this. It's not this. So if I'm walking and somebody asks me if I'm from Zimbabwe, of course I'm foreign, I won't be pissed off. But for the South Africans that look like me and they go through that, I'm really sorry that you guys go through that. But I think you'll do so much better if you just campaigned along your circles and make sure that this is changing. And when you grow older, it's also your responsibility, because our society does not look like it's going to change anytime soon and embrace being dark. It's your responsibility to build that confidence on yourself, and also empower those people that are darker, that looks like you, around you. So I hope we all try and change the world for a dark-skinned girl. Thank you so much for watching my video, and if you're watching me for the first time, don't forget to click on the subscribe button, and also don't forget to like this video. See you on my next.